Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the VectoScalar Tech Talk show. Every episode, we bring an amazing guest, and like every time, we have Suhas Motwani with us, who will be talking about the product folks journey building Asia's largest product and startup community. Welcome, Suhas, to VectoScalar Tech Talk show.
Thank you so much, Vikas, and excited to be here today. Pretty interested to chat with your audience and walk them through, the entire product management landscape. Happy to jam around. If any of them are looking to transition to product, or want to just learn more about building communities, or want to know about the product folks journey, I think it's going to be an exciting 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thanks for that. And for the benefit of audience, let me give you a brief introduction about Suhas. Suhas is the founder of one of Asia's largest product communities, the Product Folks, with 1.8 lakh plus members, right? And is building a suite of productivity apps in Distract with 1 million downloads in beta. That's an amazing thing to help folks fight digital distraction. He was earlier with PepsiCo based in Europe and someone who breathes product and communities. I'm sure this episode is going to be excited. So tell us more about that beginning, that while working in corporate, how this idea came into existence that let's have a community of product managers.
Yeah, I think this idea was even before I started with PepsiCo. I was working with an early stage startup, and I had also just begin. I was once a couple of years into my product journey, I realized that product management as such was pretty nascent, at least in India. And I wanted to meet more people in this space. I wanted to learn more about their careers. I wanted to understand how the space is going to evolve. Of course, today I think product management is the rage, but back then there weren't as many product managers in the market. And I don't come from like a tier one engineering college or a B school, so for me I didn't have that first degree network. Not too many people in my current network who were in this space, right? So that I think really prompted me to go deep, meet more product managers. And eventually we started doing offline meetups across 9 cities in India. We used to do monthly meetups for existing product managers, right? So we used to just get a bunch of interesting folks in the same room, and that's how the community started. Then realized that okay, hey, lots of interesting education related stuff. More people were interested to get into this space, so that's when we started going deeper into the education side. Lots of new community initiatives. Then we realized okay, mentorship is an important vertical for us to launch in. So after education came mentorship, after mentorship came job opportunities. So today these are three main pillars of the community for anyone looking to transition to product, or who are already in product and want to grow their career. We started with just product management, moved into product analytics, product growth, product design, the four verticals of product. And eventually, I think today we're at a stage where we feel like we started with one small city in India. And we feel like India is on track to become the product nation of the world, right? So imagine global scale products being built from India for the world. Today, I think that is where our ambition lies. Early days, we never thought of all this, but I think today, I think we at least have the foundational layer set for really helping the community grow from here.
That's an interesting journey, Suhas. Now, talking about the different role that is required to build a project or a product, we all understand the role of entrepreneur and engineer. So what is the sweet spot filled by product managers there?
Correct. Um, because you've seen the evolution, right? India was a services nation. We today also are
Yeah.
one of the largest exporters of IT, or IT contributes to one of the largest GDP exports from a country like India. um, Eventually you saw in the last decade, right, there has been a fundamental shift. You've seen products like, if there was an Amazon at a global scale, we saw Flipkart come out of India. If there was a Uber at a global scale, we saw an Ola come out of India, right? So some world-class products being built on the
Yeah.
consumer
Yeah.
side. Similarly, we saw the Zohos and the Freshworks of the world build out some amazing B2B SaaS products for the globe, right? So as a nation,
Yeah.
right, we have arrived, right? On both fronts, we are at least formidable. The talent has now, reached a scale where we can say that, hey, we're building very interesting products out of India. But that journey has not been easy. This transition from an IT services led ecosystem to a product community is where I think the larger play lies. If you ask me from a talent standpoint, yes, you're right. I think the founder is probably, or I always like to say, the first PM in a community, in a company, is probably one of the co-founders, because before you hire an external PM, it has to be the founder's vision coming and translating to something that the engineers can build.
Yeah.
Post which, I think it is very important where a product layer, right? Someone who can put down that thinking that, hey, what is it that the end consumer wants or needs, and how can that be translated into something that is very nicely functional. In today's world, I think, design teams come and play a very important role. Research team comes in, plays a very interesting role. You have growth and marketing teams which come in. So along with product, these other teams play a very formidable role in shipping the end product, apart from engineers and the founder or the entrepreneur, right? So I think together,
Well,
along
very,
with the engineer
yeah.
and the founder, you have product managers, you have product designers, you have product marketers coming through and helping shipping products. So I think that is what has shifted over the last decade.
That's a very deep insight, that there are lot many profiles that come into existence to build a product. So I always say that everything is an app. So one person building an app is also an app, and Facebook is also an app. Google is also an
Correct.
app with thousands and lakhs of people working on just that app. So fundamentally, they are
True.
an app,
Yeah,
right?
true, true,
So
true.
India,
But
you
even if
talked
you
about,
think of it
yeah,
at that point of time, a one-member person building an app, for example, Indistractable today is a two-member team, right? Within the two-member team, between me and my co-founder, we split roles, right? So one person might play the role of a product manager and a product designer. Another person might play the role of a founder slash engineer. So each of these designations, yes, in a smaller team, you have so many of them building indie apps, right? It could be a one member team, it could be a two-member team, where these roles overlap. In larger companies, the stakes are much higher, right? You are
yeah,
accountable to a lot more people. So each of these roles are then divided, and there's someone who is accountable for each of these functions. So that's how it could be a two-member team. You'll overlap in roles. If it's a bigger company, bigger responsibilities, then you try to get someone who's accountable for each of these functions.
makes sense, makes total sense. Now I have a different kind of question. Now in the product ecosystem, we know that we have the founders, co-founders, technical engineering manager, product manager, and now the industry has matured. Now coming to the experience of VectoScalar Technologies, VectoScalar Technologies is building and developing custom softwares for the clients. Now when we
Correct.
are preparing that different roles that are required to build that product. Now if say client is not approving the cost of product manager, so technically, or probably there might be still so many projects which are built the old school way. There are no
Yeah.
dedicated product managers, so not
Yeah.
that kind of stringent processes are followed. So what do you suggest in that cases? Because when client is able to pay for product manager, definitely we also have a product manager who fill that role, follow all the processes. But what if that role is not there? Then what can be done in that case?
Fair enough, right? So at that time, I think it is important for you to communicate to the client on the importance of, hey, what is the PM bringing to the table? Many times when client does not approve for a budget for a PM, especially in like when you're outsourcing, and in this case, you're outsourcing the entire project to something like
Yeah,
VectoScaler, right? In that case, who's the one who's creating the brief, right? Which a product manager will work on is probably a PRD. In this case, the client will probably give you his or her version of a PRD, right? The client is going to step in and say, okay, this is how we want it to look like. And someone needs to work on it, right? Even if you do not have a
yeah,
dedicated product resource there, the engineers, the designers will need a brief on something to work on, right? So whatever you call that document that comes through, either the client will work on it, or you will have a project manager who will step in, and some business analyst will work. There will be someone, right? That role might not be defined as a product manager, but the person who is responsible for scoping out the project in this case, right? You might not have very extensive research done on this, but in most
yeah,
cases, products in this case will be built by some insight, right? The client will come to you saying that, hey, we want to solve this problem for these set of users. So they have, to a certain extent, maybe by gut, maybe by their internal research, figured out what to build, right? The what to build is one part of what a product manager does, and sometimes they do not feel the need. They're very clear on, okay, what they need to get built, and they do not have the budget to hire a separate PM. In that case, the brief part comes through from the client, or someone on your team scopes it up. then I'm guessing they will at least have budget for a project manager, right? So at that point of time, I'm
Right.
guessing yes, they will not give you an external budget for a PM. But
Mhm.
most cases, this is changing now. I feel like if out of 10 projects 10 years ago, where they probably wouldn't have given you budget for a PM, I think today, at least out of 10 projects, for 3 or 4 projects, I'm sure you'll get budget for PM. And I think in the coming decade, the role of a product manager will get, super necessary, right? Whether AI solves for it or whether you have a dedicated PM resource, time will tell. But I think more and more people are realizing the importance of product management.
Yeah, Suhas, you have correctly mentioned that somebody has to fill that role. Somebody has to create
Yeah,
that document. Probably that
yeah,
dedicated name of product manager might not be there. Somebody is
yeah.
doing that role, and in future also, the name may change or the person or the AI will change, but that document has to be created. Those things, those
Correct.
checklists has to be followed. So that
Yeah,
is required to be done, and definitely yes, as a company, I also understand that we also need to educate the clients that how a product manager improves the quality of the product, because at the end of the day
yeah.
everybody is looking for a high quality product, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Now you have, while running such a large community, what are the few challenges that you have seen happening with product managers in early phases when they just become the product manager? Any 2 3 challenges
yeah.
which you might have seen that commonly they are facing these challenges, and what is the solution?
Yeah, I think two main things how you can look at it. I think see major challenges early at the stage of a company, right? If it's a very early stage company, a product manager will be doing multiple things, right? The role is not very well defined. I think that is one of the larger challenges. Early stage startups who hire PMs, the role of a product manager is not defined. Second, if it's even a later stage company, but the early stages of a product management career, right? Suppose you join a new company, the 30, 60, 90 days are not as streamlined because every company, the product role differs slightly, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is where the larger challenge lies is in defining what a product manager really does. Even though I think there is lots of material today available online, to a certain extent, I feel the role of a product manager has been glorified way too much. The reality is, in most cases, product management is one of the hardest things to do. I think finding great product managers is still a challenge. Of course, today in today's world, there are lots of interesting people and very talented people who have entered product roles. But for most people, I feel like people join product management thinking that hey, um, you know it's been way too glorified on the outside. So once they enter the product management role, they get a reality check that hey, okay, it's not as sexy as it looks like on the outside. It's a lot of hard work for which you're not given as much credit, because when things go down, you have to own the failure.
Yeah.
And when things go up, it is the team's success, right? So it is, I think, a thankless job, over glorified on the outside, but in reality, I think you just need to step in and get things done, so which is not always the easiest. There are certain skill sets which,
Yeah.
if you're naturally good at certain things, makes you a better product manager. These are all skills that can be learned for sure, but there's definitely a reality check, and I feel that is one of the hardest realizations for most people entering product roles.
Yeah. So as you just mentioned that one, the role itself is not that well defined. So different companies, different type of companies may have a different perception of that work, the different KPIs. And two, the people might just have that perception of the industry that it's a very cool type of work, and everybody is wanting to
Yeah,
become a product manager in a top shot company. So it must be very
yeah,
business oriented, that sort of role. But actually, as somebody told, that you have to get the work done from the team that's not under your authority. So you
exactly,
you have to work with closely
exactly.
with engineering. Yeah.
200%. I think
Yeah.
the biggest misnomer in the title is the manager part of product manager. When early
Yeah.
stage PM thinks that manager is you'll be managing a team, that is probably the biggest mistake they make, because most early stage PM roles are IC roles, right? The manager here is
Yeah.
you're managing a product, you're not managing a team. And I feel that is probably one of the biggest misnomers. I feel like product manager title should be renamed to something like product builders, because everyone's essentially working towards building a product. And eventually, yes, when you start managing a team, I feel that's one of the biggest misnomers of a product managerial role.
Yeah. And as you correctly indicated, that one should get that feel of it. One should get into the actual what is required. So instead of going beyond the titles, what is required to be done? The focus should be on
Yeah,
building a world-class product. And whatever is required, just focus on that instead of showing that, okay, what is my name? What are my KPIs from that perspective?
correct.
Now, Suhas, my next question would be around that you have increased that community and raised it to the level of Asia's largest community. So how that transition happened? Because I understand getting into the cities of India is one level, but usually I've seen happening that there are some clubs or communities formed outside of India, probably US driven, and then a local chapter
Correct.
is formed. Or but
Correct.
now in this case, it's like a product in itself, like UPI,
Yeah.
which is built into India and then
And then
delivered to
scaling it
other
globally.
nation. It's like now your community also built into India and now scaling to other countries. So how that transition
Correct.
happened?
To be very honest with you, it's been a long journey. I think this is our fifth year in existence, and the journey from scaling from India to the world, I feel, is much harder than scaling it from, when you start in, say, the valley and then you come to India. Um, the reason being, I think Indians probably adopt global products a lot easier than people outside adopting global, like Indian community. I think that was one of the largest realization. But also, I think once you are deep enough, right? We've been doing this for 5 years, so it's been a logical and a natural progression for us. Many of our members started moving outside India. They realized the importance of something like the product folks wherever they've moved to, and there was demand already. Like post COVID, when people moved to other countries, some of our earliest volunteers are now in Berlin, in SF, in New York, in Austin. So they realized, okay, hey, we also need the local community which we had when we were back in India, and they've actually really, pushed forward for something like this. Um, so that way, I think it's been slightly easier for us to kick off some of these chapters. And our approach or our JTM has been setting up offline chapters, then looping them back into the online community, and the online community again meets monthly offline, right? So I think we've got a
Right.
really nice flywheel going today for us. The journey is only going to be, I think, like it is a definitely a ladder that we are climbing as well. Lots of learnings as you try scaling globally, but it's been exciting. I think we've definitely been able to capture one side of the ecosystem, and there exists a need for something like the product folks, in different parts of the world. So that really gives us leeway into going and doing, and it's a playbook today. I think really just scaling the similar playbook in different parts of the world today.
Yeah, following the playbook, and I can see that natural transition that when somebody has tasted one product and when they go to a new space, and as you mentioned that they wanted that taste again. I think that's the best
Exactly.
thing that can happen for a startup or any product or service, that now people are who are
Correct.
not able to get it, they want it, and
Exactly.
that's a natural thing. Yeah, great. So I am seeing a question coming from Dwadashi Jain. Dwadashi Jain is asking what skills and academics are required to become a product manager. Because as you have just mentioned that inside the industry itself, the role itself is not that well defined. So
Correct.
how what are the skills and academics are required to become a product manager?
See, today, to be very honest with you, when we started, right, there wasn't as much material around this. Today, there's way too much. So today, there's a problem of plenty. I'll divide this question into two bits: skills and academics. On skills, we have a very interesting video on our YouTube channel by Shreyas Doshi. It's a 1 hour session on just what are the skills needed to become a product manager, right? I can try condensing it, but he's probably the best. The way he puts it through, no one else is able to explain to that, and that is in fact the most viewed YouTube video on our channel. So I'd suggest go check
Okay.
out that video. It's a 1 hour where he's actually walked you through what skills you'll need for an early stage PM to a mid stage PM to a late stage PM. On the academics bit is something that I can share more locally in what is happening, and I'm assuming if you're joining in from India, you have multiple options today. One is do a top tier MBA degree. That's a great way to get into product management, but that is not the only way, right? Like it is not necessary to do an MBA to get into product management. Lots of certifications available in the market. You could do one of them, but then again, a certification is not a catch-all, right? It is not necessary that, hey, if I do a certification, a job is guaranteed, right? But of course, that is one part to learning. At the product folks, we've created three layers for someone who's looking to transition or looking to get into the product role. One is we have the Product Folks Academy, which is a free learning resource for you to at least pick up the product management skill sets. So check it out. It's the Product Folks Academy. Post finishing that, we
Okay.
assign a mentor to you. So we have a platform called Ally, where you get one-to-one product mentorship from people who are senior in the industry. Post which we have a dedicated job board, right? So it's a very logical transition. This full stack product management approach is something not too many people are offering in the industry. But then again, it is your choice. There is more than enough available in the market. I shared with you three different layers that you can tackle based on
Okay.
how much support you want. But yeah, I think if you want to crack a PM role today, there's more than enough available out there. You really don't have to, struggle. In fact, I'd rather suggest pick one and go deeper because, yeah, or else you'll just be hoarding a lot of information. You'd rather start contributing. Most of your product learning will happen on the job, but you need to make that first step so that you pick up some of these skill set and at least crack a role, right? That is what you should be focusing
Yeah.
on earlier. Yeah, and then post that, I think on the job you learn a lot of product management.
Yeah, yeah. I think all these are very valid points, considering that the role is getting redefined day by day, and different people are having different kind of skill set and how they are coming. But it was interesting to know that from outside, when we just hear the word community, it seems like just a place where some meetups are happening. A community is typically
Yeah,
run in that manner, but now when
yeah,
you told we are having a university and we are having the structured program, it seems more than just a community. Probably, I think it has gone
200%.
beyond the boundaries of communities, right?
Yeah, I feel for sure. I think as is pretty structured today. We do an AMA
Yeah.
every week. We do a teardown every month. We do a cohort every quarter. We do a conference every year. Right. So if you ask me, I think we've come a long, long way from doing events every month. It's pretty structured as a community today.
Okay. I have another question coming from Simple Setia, that how should a product manager handle situation where technical challenges make certain features unattainable? Or
Got
probably
it.
you
I
want to
think.
give with an example of your past experience in similar manner.
Yeah, I think see today the technical aspects are only going to get a lot more easier. If I'm going to be very honest with you, there are very few problem statements left. The challenges are, do you have enough resources at the current time, right? The challenge, I don't think today, if you ask me, like genuinely, if you ask me, most people are not really solving hard problems, right? We're not sending a rocket to the moon unless you're working in 10% of the industry
Yeah.
that is working in space tech, for example, or is working in biohacking, right? Or working on very, very hard problems that haven't been solved till date, right? That's a very small
Yeah.
percentage of the population. The rest of us are working in industries where the tech is available, right? The challenge you will face today is, hey, do I have enough resources, time, money, and people to solve the problem that is being given to me or the problem
Mhm.
that I've discovered, right? So, as a product manager, you should be focusing number one on figuring out what is the problem that I need to solve. Spend a lot of time that most of us don't spend enough time on figuring out what problem to solve, right? Second, we come to the how, right? In the how, when you would tell me, okay, hey, there's a situation where there's a technical challenge which makes a certain feature unattainable, there I'd say, okay, rework on the scope. Number one, what is going to be feasible at that point of time. Second, work in companies or work. So if your technical team is coming and telling you that, hey, okay, certain thing is not possible, go deeper to figure out what exactly. In most cases, it's not a tech challenge. In most cases, it is a deliverable challenge at that particular period of time, right? You'll have to sit down with them to understand, maybe, okay, they might need a little more time for that, they need a little more resources. Maybe they don't have the perfect resource for that, right? If it's a machine learning
Yeah.
problem, for example, and they do not have enough resources on their ML team, or they don't have an ML team, that is probably where the tech challenge comes to. But then again, I think most great companies, you'll work with EMs, you'll work with engineers who are really, really good at their skill. So this challenge I have not really come across in teams and talent where you come across. It does happen. It does happen at early stages when you do not have right? You do not have enough capital to hire like the best machine learning engineers, right? So there is the challenge. But then you figure out what is that
Mhm.
MVP that I can break this problem down to, that I can solve right now, or okay, what do I need to get this solved, right? That is the role of a product manager. I would say I think most of us struggle with that discussion with the EMs, with the teams, that okay, hey, how do we push our boundaries to really solve it? And as a PM, how do I limit the scope, or how do I figure out an MVP that is possible in this situation? I feel we need to spend a lot more time. There are very, very few use cases which are truly impossible from a technical point of view today.
Okay, that's a beautiful insight, saying that the technical challenges could be rare, but the challenges that we are saying could be more of the lack of resources. Resources could be the talent that we have, or the time that we have, and the kind of bandwidth that we have. That could be a challenge. It may not be exactly a technical challenge, but yes, for
Exactly.
industries where are that kind of technical challenges exist, definitely teams are working to solving those kind of challenges.
Yeah, those are very
Thanks, Simple,
different
for
problems.
asking your
I think
yeah.
yeah, those are very nuanced and those are very contextual. Very difficult to
Yeah.
answer that when we're talking about a problem, broader problem statement like this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. So I have another question coming from Suman Kumar. Suman is asking, how can a PM can help to bridge the gap between client and engineer? What are the tips so that expectation remain realistic, especially in fixed scope cost project? I think one of the things that I just highlighted, where there are those resource constraints.
Yeah.
What should be done? How PM can play that role?
So we gotta again be very honest. This comes to defining what the role of a product manager comes to, right? If you see from this question and the previous one, no, we're actually deviating from the original role that a product manager was create. The role of a product manager was to go deeper into the problem space, right? This what question comes through is more of a project management. In most companies, you'd see product manager does not, and yes, yeah, again it comes down to okay, if it's an early stage company, a product manager probably will be doing the role of a project manager or an EM, right? It all depends, right? But if you ask me an ideal state, a product manager needs to sit more on the problem space, talk to users to figure out what exactly is the product that needs to be built, right? So they need to spend a lot more time on the
Yeah.
problem space. In this case, it's more of a project management problem, right? How does it's a stakeholder, it's the basics. Like if you see the first part of the question is about stakeholder management, right? Yes, in many companies now the role of a project manager, product manager gets combined, right? There is a layer of stakeholder management and it comes, you manage up, you manage down. But if you see the overall question between a client and engineer, this challenge is usually a project manager problem. It is not so much of a problem. You're sitting on a problem space and figuring out what to build here. um, what are some tips that
Yeah.
help you set expectations, especially in fixed scope and cost project? I think maybe because you're a better person to share from your IT services side that hey. And I think this is again very very general as a question,
Yeah.
but
Sorry.
this is more of I think
Yes.
an IT services problem that you might want to share your learnings from.
No, definitely. I think, as you earlier mentioned, that uh, if we forget the role, who is going to fill it, it has to be well defined. I think for the fixed
Yeah.
scope project and the everything, when we are talking about the scope and the cost, it has to go on the document and not just the interpersonal skill. So if the document says that this is the scope, this is the cost, and I think that becomes the moment of truth. Having said that, as you correctly mentioned, it seems more of a project manager type of problem compared to the product manager problem, because probably product manager is more of a client's advocacy. It's still bridging the gap, but it's more of a client's advocacy that what is the actual product that should be built, right?
Yes, I agree with you. I think that is where.
Yeah. So I have another question coming from Pankaj Jain, IT. What are the touch points of a product manager in product life cycle?
Hmm.
I think it's everywhere, but is there any particular touch points? Uh,
What are the
hope
touch
hope
points of
the
product
connection
management?
is working. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What are the touch points of a product manager in a product lifecycle? Um, I think, see, the touch points will be across the entire life cycle, right? If you ask me, Early stage, you will be sitting in ideating, post which you will translate some of these into specs, which you would build a PRD, you would build a MRD, you would build a BRD based on which company you're working at. Post which you will talk to your early teams, maybe get an initial prototype build, which would mean that you would talk to your design team, which would mean that you would talk to your engineering team, which would be meaning that you will have the weekly call set up. Then comes into the project side of things, right? Now you've defined what you need to build. You will come back with timelines. It will tell you, okay, hey, this is where we will ship. Post which you will work on a GTM plan. You will loop in marketing. You will loop in your growth teams. You will loop in your PR teams, right? You will talk for budgets to ensure that you can go reach the right markets. This is a general product life cycle, right? So as a product manager, you're sitting across the entire life cycle. Now, if it's a B2C product, if it's a B2B product, certain parts change, right? If it's a B2B product, you'll work with slightly early design partners to ensure that you're going in the right direction. Same place, if you're working on a B2C product, you will work with beta customers to see, okay, hey, if you're going in the right direction. Post with then alpha launch,
Okay.
beta launch, then you'll go into a production launch, right? So if you ask me, the touch point of a product manager is going to be right from inception to a stage where the product live in the market, getting feedback from them, going into second iteration, third iteration, and growing the product life cycle. Right. So if you ask me, I think the touch points
So
is across the entire stage. As a product manager, you're responsible for this entire flow.
so when the product is in the life cycle, product manager is going to be there. So
Exactly.
that seems to be
Exactly.
the thing, right? Very well answered. I have Bhavna Mia having this question. In your experience, what emerging trends do you see shaping the future of our industry, and how should product managers respond? Any trends that you as a community owner see happening?
See, I think the biggest impact in the role of a product manager is going to come with AI, right? Whether you like it or not, you need to start adapting. Each of these tools today are a great aid in whichever sector, whether you're doing user interviews, whether you're doing product road mapping, whether you're doing writing PRDs, whether you're communicating with a lot of your internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. So I think lots of AI tools today in the market are able to make your life a little easier. I think in the future, AI does not replace product management, but product managers who use AI tools will replace normal product managers, right? That is what I feel the role of product management
Yeah,
is going to go through. Second, within your entire product roadmap as well, basically whichever product you're building, the role of AI is inevitable today, right? Whether it comes as an internal
yeah.
layer on top of whatever you're building or an external competition that comes through, it's a matter of time, right? So this decade, upskill yourself, see how you can work with AI tools to make your lives easier. Second, in any company or any product that you're working on, the role of AI is inevitable. If you can be a fast mover, you will definitely be valued far greater than your peers.
Okay, that makes total sense that AI is playing its role. I have another question coming. I have a couple of questions in the pipeline. I quickly wanted to
Yeah.
cover that if we can just give some insights on each of those questions. So Anup Verma is asking, how shall project manager go about managing time and requirement for a product and setting different timeline for the same, and what is a healthy way to communicate it with the stakeholder and rest of them? Again, we see that confusion between, or probably the overlapping role of, not the confusion, of project
Yeah.
manager and product manager. But I think key is communication, that when there are different timeline, what is the best way to communicate?
See, I think based again very contextual. First of all, the role of a
Yeah,
project manager and product manager is one different. Two definitely overlaps to a certain extent in certain companies.
yeah,
That aside, I think if the question is okay, hey, how do you communicate in a healthy way? First of all, I think setting regular cadence. Like I think in your case, need to go deeper into what the exact problem was, because I think it's very contextual to a
yeah,
certain case. But what
yeah,
I have followed is internally try to drop as many updates, like over communicate, especially when you work in a remote team. One, be super communicative and set regular frequencies on these, right? If you're communicating upwards, whether it is a daily frequency or a weekly, at least a weekly frequency, let your managers know what are, in a very simple weekly update email, send to them that, okay, hey, these are the successes that I've had this week. these are some blockers that I have, and if you can help unblock, right? That is one thing that when you're managing up. On the rest of the team, when you're managing sideways, I think now again depends on, it's very contextual, because
Okay.
for some people it might
Yeah.
be on, the cadence will depend on what kind of a company you're working in, what stage your product is in, right? If it is something that is very early stage, you have lots moving every single day, you might have to drop an end of day update, right? Sometimes it's a slightly
Sure.
more defined project, you have longer timelines, maybe a weekly cadence. Maybe a project is already in a mature stage and you're adding, more clients on board, etc. Then maybe a monthly cadence where you do a town hall, etc. Right? And town hall
Right.
also allows you to do it with, stakeholders which are on adjacent teams. They also get to know what's going on here. So there are different ways to do it. Very difficult to set a general cadence here.
Yeah.
There are multiple articles if you are interested to go on the art of communication, especially in much larger company. In the early stage
Yeah.
companies, I think the game is a lot different.
Yeah, and I we totally agree that there are different level of communication depending on the context, as you just mentioned that it is contextual. But you mentioned a very appropriate word that at least in the early stages, over communication is better than the under communication. That's something which is not communicated. So whenever you feel that okay, this needs to be communicated, just communicate without thinking too much. I have another
Correct.
question
And I
coming
think there are
from
lots of
Neha Jain.
tools. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there are lots of
yeah,
tools that
you
help you in
complete. Yeah,
detail. Yeah. Now, I was
yeah,
just sharing that there are lots of tools that help you in, summarizing some of, like, the easiest thing that you could do is after every call set up a minutes of meeting, right? And there are hundreds of tools. Use broadcast, use rewind, use hundreds of these AI tools that can just give you summaries after your call. 99% of people don't do it, right? We know that, okay, how important it is to, put you, your client, your other teammates on the same page. 99% don't do it. So I think
yeah.
in a hybrid environment like the ones we live in, just try to over communicate, try to get better at written communication. I think that saves a lot of time for a lot of people.
Makes total sense. I have another question coming from Neha Jain, which is actually a very product oriented question. What do you think sets a great product apart from the competition?
See,
One or two
again,
qualities
like,
of the great product?
yeah, very, very difficult to say this, right? But if you ask me on a general basis, I'd say, see, if I answer this in a see, it's a very broad statement, broad question, and I can only come up with very broad answers to this. But let me try taking an example, right? For me, a
Yeah.
functional product that solves a use case in an economical fashion, right? I think Jeff Bezos' statement, when you think of Amazon, right, 10 years from now also, people will never complain for three things, right? The cheapest product on the market, the fastest and the most convenient delivery, and the best quality of a product, right? These are the three things that, whichever angle access you divide Amazon, you slice dice Amazon, these are three things which will be relevant even 10 years or 20 years from now, right?
Mm.
For Amazon, like I'm just giving you that example, right? So if you are to build an e-commerce product tomorrow, a D2C product, right? These are three things that are going to go whichever. Like for example, if you launch a competitor that is probably cheaper from the market, but the quality is not as much, right? There's going to be a question mark. It's not going to be as easy for you to go, because consumers do want the best quality at the cheapest price and the fastest delivery, right? There was a huge furor when the entire 10-minute delivery came through, saying that, hey, does this 10-minute
Yeah.
delivery really make sense, right? Today, if you see, there is a shift in consumer behavior in urban markets, right? um,
Right.
a lot of interesting products are being sold on Zepto beyond just groceries. It started with groceries, but today there are categories which e-commerce companies used to sell, which are now available on 10-minute delivery. Big Basket
Yes.
category came out and said that, hey, okay, quick commerce doesn't make sense for us. We are going to continue doing 24 hours. Now BB Instant is a thing, right? Where they've come out with a product line and they've doubled down on something like that. So for me, if you ask, and taking this entire category as an example, I
Yeah.
think in your particular space, based on what you're building, there will be certain non-negotiables. If you can figure that out, I think that is what, for me, if it's on general basis, if you can solve a problem for a consumer in an economical, in a highly productive and a high quality space, I think regardless of whichever space you're building, you will win against the competition. But
That's a
that's
very
a general
amazing and
company project.
descriptive definition. Yeah, that's a general,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think if it is coming from your experience, then you probably 10 years or 20 years down the line, the way we code that 20 years ago, that this person said this about quality of a product, probably we'll be
yeah,
using this as a statement
yeah,
for a startup world. I will take up this last question because many people are facing this kind of aspiration and having this kind of aspiration. So Kritika Rana is asking, how can an individual transition from their current position to a role as a, it's written as project manager, but we understand that we are talking about
architect.
product manager, because there has been a move and mindset change that people want to get into the product manager of the top companies, top product
Yeah,
companies, and they are coming from
yeah,
very diverse background. So
yeah.
what are the 2 3 things that they can do?
Yeah, I'll actually have a very structured answer because I think over the last 5 years,
Yeah,
I've answered this way too many times, right? So my first point to you, especially if you're senior in your current industry, is to take a step ladder approach, right? Um, Everyone wants to work at a Google or Facebook and Instagram, right? Because
yeah,
these are supposedly the coolest company. But then again, understand that the smartest people in town are probably vying to work there. So your competition is going to be super high. That said, try figuring out a path to this, right? Um, how you can do this is, I think, again, like I shared earlier, at least at the product folks, we've been able to divide this into education, into mentorship, and opportunity, right? There's a
okay,
checklist approach we follow just to get you at a baseline. Check out the Product Folks Academy. I think we've covered most of the material. There's product management beginner or fundamental, the product management intermediary, and now we're launching product manager advanced, right? Pick up one of these layers, finish the education aspect, then we'll connect you one to one with a mentor via a platform called Ally, post which you will have access to job opportunity. The reason I ask you to go through this is, and you don't have to go through all of it, right? If you think, okay, here, I'm ready to crack an interview today, or my product management skill set is great, what a role of a mentor actually does is try to help you finish, right? Especially in a question like this, it boils down to what is your context, right? My advice for someone who is right out of college, right? If you ask me, oh, see, I don't know her profile, so if you ask me, if anyone asks me how do I transition to product, I tell them, okay, divide it into education, mentorship, transition, practice, mock, etc. All of that comes through. There's an entire like checklist available there, right? But what the mentorship or what the one-to-one allows is to understand where exactly
yeah,
is Kritika in her career today. What is she good at? What are the kind of roles that might be better suited for her today? And how does she make that transition? Right? Just dividing that and having someone at the other end to help you through this process is where I feel like mentorship really comes in. And third, I think, is for you to realize that a market like this is going to be super hard. Everyone wants to get into a product role. So what really sets you apart, right? So the question that I would start by asking someone is, imagine you're applying for an APM or a PM position. There is someone who's already done another APM or a PM position in a competitor company. That person is competition for you. Second, there is someone from a top tier MBA degree, an ISB or a, IM ABC,
yeah,
who's looking to come get that similar role. Third, there is you who's trying to get that role, right? So my question to them is very simple: what have you done that sets you apart from these people? If you haven't, start there, right? If there are 10 people competing for a similar position, there's not a positive sum game, right? There are only limited opportunities in the market. There are 10x the number of people trying for it. So whether you like it or not, you need to get better than XYZ to get that role. Or it's a matter of, okay, hey, how do I improve? I'd say, and right, how do you improve your surface area of luck, right? There are different things that you do on the network. Like there's an entire, like, if you go through we have an entire hour long workshop just on this that's available on the academy.
yeah,
But if you ask me, in short, I think focus on the education layer, focus on the mentorship layer, and third, focus on the networking layer, which will lead you to opportunities. I hope that
yeah.
helps.
And as you mentioned, yeah, I'm sure it will help Suhas, because the way you started that, I have a very structured answer, and it was actually a very structured answer, that these are the 3 steps, and that what are the key things that one has to keep in mind when especially they are coming for transition. There are still a couple of questions, but in the interest of time, probably I'll share the LinkedIn link of
Yes,
this discussion. So if you get some time, or probably somebody from your team can just answer them in the chat, it will be great for the team. And
that
towards the closure, just wanted to ask that, What is the road ahead for product folks? Like world's largest, or what is the road ahead for you?
See, definitely, I think the aim is to be globally the largest and the most engaged and most loved product community out there. We don't focus so much on the top line numbers. Of course, we definitely track it to a certain extent. But the idea here is if you can really create value for your members, they will recommend more members to come and join, right? So that's a secondary metric for us. But actually, just ensuring that we are listening to the voice of the community, figuring out what exactly they want, building that out for the community or enabling that layer, and really adding 10x value back to the community, I think everything else falls in place. So if you ask me, the idea is yes, globally our eyes are are definitely on like like the vision is there to become a global player, but at the same time I think not to lose sight of creating immense value for our community.
Again, a very structured answer. It felt to me that if I'm interviewing Suhas for a product management of a role, and the way he structured gave a very structured answer that my KPI is this, and this is what I'm focusing on, and this is what I'm
Yeah,
not focusing upon. That's a very structured. Probably
yeah.
once a product manager, you're always a product manager.
Always
And
a pro-
for the yeah, for the interest of our viewers, you must be having further more queries with Suhas, so you can follow him on the LinkedIn. He's a very active person. He speaks a lot. He shares a lot. He's that passionate guy who is talking and living the life of truly a product manager and mentor. Thanks, Suhas, for being on VectoScalar Tech Talk show and sharing this insight with our participants.
Thank you so much for hosting me, because I think great initiative that you've been running, and I feel like a lot of people learn a lot via your initiative. So thanks for doing this.
Thanks again, and thanks to the viewers, because you are the, as Suhas just mentioned, you are our main KPI, that the value gain that you are having through this VectoScalar Tech Talk. Keep joining. See you next time with next amazing speaker. Till then, bye bye. Have a nice day ahead.